The Locked On Podcast Network presents The Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
The Edmonton Oilers were trailing 3-1 in game number 1 of the Stanley Cup final to the Florida Panthers. They couldn't get anything going on offense, but slowly but surely they worked their way back into the game and won in overtime.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers.
These opening games of a playoff series generally go one of two ways. Either the first 10 minutes are chaos. Utter unhinged chaos, scoring chances, big hits, guys taking numbers, trying to ingratiate themselves, trying to get their feet under them, especially after a multi-day layoff like you had going into this series where both teams had almost a full week worth of time to just kind of recharge. And the Oilers opened the scoring very early. Leon Draisaitl got his name on the sheet. Last year, Leon didn't score a single goal in the Stanley Cup final, was dealing with a litany of injuries, including a broken rib and finger. And to just get on the sheet, to score first, it's not a guarantee you're going to win, but it's a really nice way to get everybody a little calm. And I think you keeping the crowd in the game a little bit longer. I think everybody else up and down the bench kind of getting the feeling like in Rocky IV when Drago starts to bleed. Okay, yeah, the Panthers are a good hockey team. Yes, they've given us a hard time, but we're a good hockey team too. We can make something happen here. And that's why scoring first was so essential to getting their feet under them. And then slowly but surely, the Panthers do what the Panthers do. They start to squeeze the life out of you like Homer wrenching Bart's neck. It becomes a slow, agonizing death. And at 3-1, I didn't feel like this game was over, but it felt like something was going to need to dramatically swing the Oilers' way if they were going to get back in the game. And a slap shot from Victor Arvidsson at a funky angle with a moving screen in front is exactly the type of funky play you need if you want to get back in a game where the other team is really good. And make no mistake about it. Yes, the Oilers won game number 1, and it is not news to say, hey, the other team might win some games in a best-of-7 series in the Stanley Cup final. You can feel good about this. You can even get a little braggadocious if you want to feel good about it, by all means. You're not on the team. But the guys on the team, they know one game is not the end goal here. It is to win 3 more of the next 6 games and take home that trophy. But we got a long way to go till we get there, miles to go before we sleep. And talking about this game and trying to do it justice in just a 30-minute podcast is going to be a challenge. I'm going to be honest with you. Based on this game, I feel like I could do 4 hours of content off of just that game. I think something that weirdly kept sticking with me as this game was going along was just how much energy Vasily Podkolzin and Kasperi Kapanen had. And look, nobody's mistaking those guys for all-stars. Nobody's saying they're essential components. But when you only get 11, 12, 13 minutes a night, you got to do whatever you can to try and make an impact, to try and find a way to be as noticeable as you can. And when you only play 11 or 12 minutes per game, maybe you're going to have a little more juice than everybody else who's playing a little more regularly, getting that every third shift rotation later in a close game. And Podkolzin ultimately is the guy who forces the delay of game penalty that sets up the Oilers' game-winning goal in overtime. So I think it's really fitting that Podkolzin ultimately gets an assist by proxy for forcing that delay of game penalty from being such a menace on the forecheck for the previous 75, 76 minutes of this game. And when you have guys that are in those highly specialized roles who are only going to get 11 to 14 minutes per night, maybe they kill penalties, maybe they sneak onto a second power play in the case of a Corey Perry, or in Corey Perry's case, a first power play because Zach Hyman's hurt. But man, if you're getting contributions up and down the lineup like this, where Victor Arvidsson, who started the game on your fourth line, scores a goal, and you get a goal from Matthias Ekholm, who is as good as he is not known for his goal scoring. But at that point, when the Oilers tie the game on the Ekholm goal, I really started to feel it. I really started to feel the ground shift under them, because for large stretches of that game, the Oilers just could not get anything going. And the Panthers, to their credit, played some incredible neutral zone defense, played some great defensive zone defense, and really did a masterful job of corralling the Oilers to the outside. Of as soon as the Oilers would gain the offensive zone, there would be a defender, whether it was an actual defenseman or a defensive forward playing defense, stepping up, disconnecting the puck from the puck carrier, forcing the puck carrier to move the puck laterally. And of course, that creates counterattack opportunities. And you saw the Panthers find ways to create, I think, one of the big storylines coming out of this game and questions I have is, how are the Oilers going to do a better job in the face-off dot? And usually face-offs are like the last on my chief of concerns because they don't have a strong correlation to possession. But the Panthers did such a good job in their offensive zone faceoffs, running set plays off of tie-ups, overlapping forwards, creating space for shooters. And as much as I don't think faceoffs matter a whole lot on a season-long basis, I do think in a best-of-7 series, if one team is going to continuously win offensive zone faceoffs and create high-danger chances off of them, that is something worth addressing. And then real quick, the last point I wanted to hit on in our opening segment, which is just kind of me word-vomiting all of the emotions I've felt over the last 4.5 hours or so. But that's why we do this. Games like that are why I love this sport. It's why I do 3 different podcasts throughout the course of the week talking about hockey, because there's nothing else in the world that feels like that overtime game winner. And as soon as that puck got over to Leon and I saw Bob trying to push as hard as he could to get to the opposite post, I stood up and I screamed, because I knew Leon wasn't going to miss that. And every now and then you have those little out-of-body experiences, and that's only one game. As a fan, you can enjoy it a little bit more than they can. I, for one, try to keep my feet on the ground and say, okay, it's one game, 3 of the next 6, 500 hockey rest of the way. That's doable. But at the same time, man, that was incredible, and that was one of the best games the Oilers had played all year. And like we keep talking about, and the everydayers have heard me say, you keep getting better as the playoffs go along. You're going to be playing hockey for a long time. And we are in the first week of June, and the Oilers have a 1-0 series lead, something they never did in last year's Stanley Cup final, have a series lead.
Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
Jordan Ott, the next head coach. 4-year deal, first timer.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast.
So much to get to with the hiring of Jordan Ott as the next head coach of the Phoenix Suns, the 4th in 4 years, as we all know. Joining me to break it down, as always, from the Wild West Valley, my fellow Suns Credential media member. How are we feeling, Ben Garcia?
Cleveland! This is for
jersey?
you! Yeah, it's a LeBron jersey that I didn't know I'd be using for a Locked On Suns show 7 years later when I bought it. I make the Cleveland joke, but should we just start playing the Michigan State Spartans fight song? Should we just start doing that? I mean, listen,
Do you
man.
know it? I don't know it.
No, I don't even know the ASU.
We got to learn it.
Man,
I feel like we're going to have to recite it to be able to enter
Hey,
the building going forward.
You feel aligned? You feeling aligned?
I do.
You feel it? Okay. Jordan Ott, new head coach. Can't say I'm surprised.
Nope. Can't say I'm surprised. Although I picked it and you didn't. You picked Johnny Bryant. I said it would be Ott.
I went down. I went down with the ship when I saw it, but yeah. I mean, I can't say I was surprised, but yeah, God, social media is a hellscape right now, man.
Yeah, I will get to all of it. We definitely will. And I think some of it's fair, some of it's less fair. But just to quickly go back over his resume so we know what we're talking about here. He is obviously a first-time head coach. He is the Cleveland Cavaliers assistant, not the associate head coach. That was the other guy. He has worked under Mike Budenholzer in Atlanta. He has worked under Kenny Atkinson, Steve Nash, and Jacques Vaughn in Brooklyn, and Darvin Ham with the Lakers before most recently under Atkinson once again for the number one seeded Cavaliers. He is a young guy. I would say, around...
I think he's 32. I checked. Or I think he's a little bit older than that. That's not right.
Yeah. But
I think he's 39. 40. He's 40.
Younger than
40
Vogel. Younger than Bud. This is a different breed of guy and an offensive tactician. You know, we talked about the other day, he was Steve Nash's, called by Steve Nash, and we'll get to him later. But in Brooklyn, during the time when Durant and Kyrie and Harden were there, a super team with championship expectations, this is the dude who was dialing up that offense for a first-time head coach in Steve Nash and was a trusted kind of right-hand man. So there is a resume there, Ben, and I think that's kind of where we have to start. This is a guy that we said Johnny Bryant felt like he was next up. You know, by the end of the week, maybe he's the Knicks coach. I don't know. But that's not to say that Jordan Ott is a Brian Gregory of coaches or somebody who is purely getting this job because of who he knows and where he's been. This is a dude that has accomplished a lot and I think could do a very good job as an NBA head coach.
I agree. It's all the things that you said. I'm not even going to mention, I joked about it in the beginning, the Michigan State stuff, but I don't even want to mention that. There's no reason to. I'm not coming on here today. Like, did I want Johnny Bryant to get the job? Sure. But Jordan Ott was under Kenny Atkinson twice. I like Kenny Atkinson a lot. I'm not going to come on here whining and crying like a lot of people are doing. Jordan Ott has earned the right to be a head coach. I know just as much about him as I knew about the other candidates. Sure, he wasn't my top 5 head coaching guy, but they hired him, and I'm okay with it. And from, the guy that I've talked to who covers Locked On Cavs, that was his guy. Jordan Ott has earned a spot to be a head coach in the NBA. The one thing I will say is if Johnny Bryant, let's say he does get the job with the New York Knicks, those two are going to be conjoined at the hip forever and see who has the better career in terms of head coaching. So I'm all for it, man. I'm not going to do this whining and crying thing that you and I did with Brian Gregory, and we had the right to do. This guy's qualified for the job.
I do think maybe tomorrow we can dig into that more, why it's different, right? Because, but briefly, like, my issues with Brian Gregory were the lack of a search, the lack of expertise, the lack of experience, not expertise, experience, the lack of a resume that would make an NBA executive ready to be a GM, and what he said at the press conference, where he basically said that the reason he got the job and what he's going to do while in the job all go back to Matt Ishbia and the relationships that he has with Ishbia and Bartelstein and the other guys who got promotions and whatnot. I didn't like that. There was a search this time. Jordan Ott does have the experience and a lot of it that I've pointed out things, Bruce Brown playing center for the Nets, or what they were able to do taking that Lakers team to the conference finals in Darvin Ham's first season, way ahead of schedule, fitting guys in like D'Angelo Russell, who you wouldn't have thought would necessarily work out there, and helping Austin Reeves develop. There's a lot you can look at, and we'll see what he says at the press conference. But I think it would be an overreaction to say that the only thing he's going to do is have this type of alignment and everything else. But we'll get to that more in a second. The one thing that this guy does have that you and I had been hoping for, that we were kind of worried might not end up being the case, is he's an offensive guy. And I think that that's a big thing that you have to focus on rather than just getting hung up in the narratives. Is everywhere he's gone, this dude has gotten big kudos from big names in this sport for his tactician ability, his innovativeness, his creativity, player development on the offensive side of the ball. And we know that this team is going to need that to put Book in better positions to succeed, to help the young guys develop into better offensive players, whoever this roster ends up bringing in this summer, versus the past 2 years where it's just been slow, ISO, disgusting to watch basketball. I'm excited to see what he can do.
I'm excited for it too. I'm not going to come on here and complain. I think you had mentioned he's earned the spot to be here. I wanted Johnny Bryant. It's fine that he's not here either. I wouldn't even say, like, I know he like, for the things you point out, he's an offensive tactician, but we've talked about this before. I don't know if I would classify Jordan Ott really as anything. I know he had a lot of say in the offensive side of the ball, but especially in Cleveland. But I mean, like, listen, man, Spoelstra, you've mentioned this before, Mazzulla, Pop, like, we don't know what their specialties are. Sure, I would say Ott probably leans offense, but like, what if in these conversations, like, they're just trying to find a leader too, and he was the best leader for the job? Like, at some point, we have to talk about this team, like, winning basketball games. I'm sorry, man, it's kind of in the future. Like, we'll talk about that when we get there. We have to start at step one, build a culture, have a leader. Jordan Ott, listen, I'll defend it. He might be a great leader. He might be someone to fall in line with. Booker, I mean, gave him his word as well. So I'm with it, man. I think Jordan Ott's going to be a good hire for this team. I mean, like, think about Budenholzer, right? We were all, myself, everyone was shaking hands and kissing babies at the press conference. That's how thrilled they were with getting Mike Budenholzer. And it didn't work out. And this idea that it's not change, it might just not be change for us. But what Ishbia is doing now is something he should have done a couple years ago. He's bringing in his guys, man. And he's doing it now. And you know what? I like the hire. Might have not been my first choice. But like, that's my ultimate first reaction to it is I think he's going to be a good head coach here.
And the reason it is changed too, we got to remember, right? If you're talking about, oh, this was just, Ishbia had the final say when he met with them in Michigan, and all he can think about is, green and white and blah, blah, blah. You got to remember, in 2023, when they hired Vogel, the rumors were, I think that Ishbia probably wanted Nick Nurse first. Philly just stole him right away. Then you started to hear that Ishbia may have wanted Doc Rivers back then. And obviously that didn't happen, but they kind of snuck him in the back door for a late interview in that process, and I don't know what ultimately happened. I believe he didn't take a job that year until halfway through. And they end up with Vogel. Then 2024, Bud is the doc of that search, right? Bud is the Nick Nurse of that search. So even if this was heavily influenced by Ishbia, that also signals a change for him to not think of the old, stodgy, experienced guy whose name I know because they've been on TV or they've won a title before or whatever. This is a guy we have no idea about, a guy who is getting a fresh start. So I just want people to kind of like, if you have concerns about it, that's fair. But let's be specific about what the weaknesses that you've said, they very well could be there, but also things that are different about this and that could work out better than others.
The finals are here. The Pacers play game 1 tonight.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast.
Game 1 is here for the Indiana Pacers, their biggest game in 25 years. Pending how the series goes, they could be playing their biggest game in franchise history at some point in the next 2 weeks. Remarkable. And this one's already up there. They fell behind early in that Lakers series. in their first finals appearance. If they do better this time, they'll be playing some of their biggest games ever before you even know it. We're going to look at game one, things that I think will be important, both for seeing how this series is going and setting the tone for the rest of Pacers Thunder, how adjustments could be made. As you all know, I have my own major thoughts on how important game one is to series, and the Pacers have won every game one they've played this year. They have never trailed in a series. Can they keep that up? So many things to keep an eye on, and is very critical. Pacers Thunder game one. And I think that the one thing that is immeasurable that everybody's going to wonder about, that I was kind of asking about today, something I bumped into a couple players and actually talked to them about, is the bright lights of all this. You know, it's Oklahoma City. The city itself is not glitzy and glamoury. They've played in Vegas. They've played in New York. They've played in Boston. They're ready for the physical big stage. But something that's been an interesting part of this playoff run is something that Tyrese Halliburton said before the Bucks series even started, right? Last year, they admitted it. That part of them was just happy to be there in the playoffs. And to their credit, they fought through that emotion and they won 2 rounds. And they made the conference finals, and they got a lot of great experience out of that. And Pascal Siakam showed his leadership, and that was all awesome stuff. It's all built them up to being the team they are right now on the championship stage. However, this year, because of that feeling they admitted last year, they did not feel like they were happy to be here. They had real goals of winning real things, and series plural again, and they have, and that's great. They have handled those emotions well. They've proven that they were right to have very strong aspirations for this playoffs. And yet, every round so far, this group, every single player on the team, except for Tony Bradley and the rookies, had been there before. They'd been to the conference finals before, or the second round or whatever. This is a brand new stage. If you are not Pascal Siakam, if you are not Thomas Bryant, welcome to a new round. You are playing in the finals for the first time. Maybe there's somebody who played in one that I am forgetting and didn't win it, but I believe it is Caruso, Thomas Bryant, and Pascal Siakam in the series, and that's it. It's a huge new stage. And so some of the players I was talking to today, like, they saw the amount of media, and it wasn't like it didn't change their emotions, but it does make you be like, oh, it's the finals. Like, it's the freaking NBA finals. And their emotions haven't hit them yet because whatever reason, they've just been practicing. Maybe emotions don't hit them at all. Some guys are immune to that kind of stuff. But there'll be a moment where if you're a Pacers player or a Thunder player, you walk out of the tunnel in the Paycom Center, or you show up at the arena and there's a lot going on, or you will go to the scores table to check in, or your name is announced as a starter, or whatever. You watch the game preview on ABC tonight or whatever, ESPN tonight. Whatever moment, it's going to come for everyone where they go, oh, whoa, like it's the finals, right? Joe Lorenzi of the Oklahoma asked Shai Gilgeous-Alexander a good question about like managing the expectations of the moment and things like that today. And so I'm going to, and everyone has talked about a million basketball reasons on the floor why this team's better and that player's better and this could happen and that could happen. And maybe it's all true. Maybe in a vacuum, all these emotions come out in the wash. But the finals are just different, right? Like some guys just shrink, some guys rise. And so how much do the bright lights of the moment impact these players? Because the Pacers have fought through it. They haven't had any new experiences till now, and that's great. But it now is. And what does that mean? When do those nerves come? Does it fight off till a game 5, a game 6, a game 7? Do they look good right away? Can it be a competitive advantage for them? And that's specifically where guys like Siakam and Caruso are so valuable, who have done that before and played actual real important roles on good teams to keep guys, in check, in line, whatever, about what's going on, what's coming next, how to manage this, if falling behind is or isn't a big deal, blah, blah, blah. That is the only thing that if I dive into anything today or anyone talks about anything leading up to the series, that is just incalculable. You just don't know. And there's a lot of big basketball questions separate to that. So let me fly in the face of what I just said and actually talk about basketball things that will be absolutely critical today for the Pacers, identifying how they're going to play in the series. Can they fight through some of the basic stuff that everybody thinks they're going to have to fight through in the series? Let me take you back to the Minnesota Timberwolves in the last round to talk about the Pacers, because everybody identifies what has to happen against the Thunder. You can't turn it over. You can't let them play fast. Guess what the Timberwolves did? They turned it over. They let the Thunder play fast. It's so easy to say these things. It's not easy to do them. And almost every game you'd hear someone with Minnesota in their post-game media talk about, we've got to have better ball security. We've got to take care of the ball. Intangibles, little things. And they got better at it throughout the series. They scored 100 billion points in game 4. but it was a struggle for them. And the Thunder love to force turnovers and they love to score in transition. And that's why their pace is so good and part of why their defense is so good and part of why they're so miserable to play against. You can listen to Obi Toppin on this very podcast feed yesterday talking about how annoying the Thunder defense can be. Annoying was the word he used. I thought that was absolutely perfect. And so how does that manifest for the Pacers in these games? And the real question I have by using the Minnesota Timberwolves as the springboard is, can the Pacers do the exact things everybody knows they should, including themselves? It sounds so easy to talk into a microphone and look at you and say this, or for the Pacers to talk into a microphone and say this, or for anyone to say it. Don't turn it over. Just don't. That's great. The Timberwolves said it a million times, and they turned it over 18, 20, 17, a billion times every game. Too many. And the Wolves scored a bunch of fast break points. Look at Game 6 of Pacers-Knicks. You think the Knicks came into that game thinking they were going to turn it over a bunch? No, they thought they were going to manage their turnovers like they did in Game 5. They had, 17 turnovers, and the Pacers scored over 30 points off those turnovers. Offense came easy to them. The Knicks knew they shouldn't do that, and they did it anyway. Whatever you want to call that, a lack of focus, a lack of execution, whatever, there are known challenges of playing the Oklahoma City Thunder. And how the Pacers do against those known challenges will be revealing, because those are the hardest ones to overcome throughout a series. That's the stuff that makes the Thunder as good as they are. If you look bad in those moments early in the series, it's going to be really hard to get good at all the other stuff to overcome those challenges. More specifically, the turnovers is a big one, right? Don't do it. This is one that for the Pacers, they'll feel good about, and they should. They don't turn it over very much naturally, but guys who have loose passes off the bench, that's basically everybody at times. Guys who have loose handles, Andrew Nembhard recently, Aaron Nesmith's when it gets away from him. Even Siakam and Turner have loose handles at times. They got to be crisp. Getting the Thunder those easy chances. Getting back in transition. The Thunder play like the Pacers, fast. They want to get up the floor. Very important. Do not let them score off of makes quickly like the Pacers do. Be ready for zones. The Pacers had to be ready for zones against the Bucks and Cavs. They were at times. They absolutely were not at other times. The Knicks made everybody forget about the Pacers' zone struggles because they never play zone. The Thunder absolutely will. Zone will become a topic of conversation again in this series. Both ways. I bet the Pacers mix in some zone. They haven't had to so far in the playoffs. The Thunder saw a lot of zone in the regular season. I bet we see zone in this series. Has Rick Carlisle ever pulled out zone in the key finals before? Regardless, the Pacers have to be ready for zone. All these things, they sound so simple to be ready for. I just said them, and I'm an idiot. I don't know what I'm talking about. But the Pacers have to know. If they get bogged down by zone, if they turn it over a million times, if the Thunder run them out of the gym, it's hard to run the Pacers out of the gym. The Thunder have a chance to do it. That they're screwed. No other team has been able to easily do these things against the Thunder. That's why the Thunder are in the finals. It's not easy to do this. But if there's like a lack of focus or clear-cut plan to work around these things, that's one, concerning, because that's sometimes Pacers bread and butter stuff. But two, then the Pacers aren't adjusting to like unexpected challenges that they can easily solve. It's like they got to get back to basics, and the Thunder will be feeling great about how they start the series. So that, to me, beyond the intangibles, is some of the stuff in game one that I think is critically important for the Pacers. Do not lose the things that everybody knows are coming. Do not get beat by the challenges that I can tell you about from far away. There's a lot of micro challenges that I can't tell you about, and I can't wait to see how the Pacers handle them.
The NBA Finals are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action right now. When you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. FanDuel makes betting easy. Whether it's picking your favorite teams or diving into player props from three-pointers to steals, there's so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. You can place that first $5 bet on who you think will win the NFL Rookie of the Year. Travis Hunter is 9-1 to win the offensive award, but 10-1 to win the defensive award as well. I would probably take both of those. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today.
The SEC is still going to get everything it wants in the college football playoff.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners.
There's been a lot of discussion about the college football playoff expansion, where it's heading to. There seems to be a lot of traffic, a lot of positive movement towards a 16-team playoff. there's just a lot of debate over what that format should look like. There's been discussion of 5 automatic qualifiers based on conference champions, along with 11 at-large bids to make it 16. There's been discussion of the SEC and the Big Ten each receiving 4 automatic bids to the playoff, along with the Big 12 and the ACC each getting 2, and then Notre Dame getting 1 if they're ranked high enough, and then 1 going to the group of 5 or 6 if they're ranked high enough to get 1 as well. But there's also been a lot of discussion about how the SEC might be moving away from the idea that they want 4 automatic bids in the college football playoff. And I think when this discussion began, a lot of it was in line with this idea that the SEC would add a 9th conference game to the schedule. And as the meetings went along in Destin, Florida, you heard more from coaches that they were not necessarily in favor of adding a 9th conference game. You add a 9th conference game, that means there's going to be more losses on the schedule for every team in the SEC. That's just the way it works, right? That's that old meme. The SEC is 500 in SEC play. That's a joke. I hope you're getting the sarcasm there. And so I understand where coaches are coming from, where athletic directors are coming from. When you add that 9th SEC game, it creates an opportunity for less bowl eligibility. And it's going to make it a little bit more difficult, a little bit more challenging for teams to make a run at the college football playoff. You look at what some of the SEC teams are playing in non-conference just this year. Texas is playing Ohio State. Oklahoma's playing Michigan. LSU's playing Clemson. They are scheduling difficult non-conference games amidst having a difficult conference schedule. You add a 9th conference game there, and there's going to be less motivation for programs to add big-time non-conference games. These, matchups that Oklahoma's going to have down the road with Nebraska and Clemson, and then who knows what else, those could go by the wayside because there's going to be less of an opportunity, less of a chance, a more difficult path to bowl eligibility and to the college football playoff by having all these difficult games in the conference and then adding non-conference as well. And so the SEC is being viewed as, hey, we were 4 automatic qualifiers. Well, I think that's one of those business tactics, right? You aim high, you talk about the most extreme thing that you want in a business deal, and understand that you have a point that you're willing to settle for. And so you look at the 4 automatic qualifier theory and that proposal, and yeah, that might have worked out well for the SEC. That might have worked out just fine for the Big Ten, but it could have potentially limited the SEC on the number of teams it could get into a 16-team playoff. Because you look back at the 2024 playoff seeding, and there was a good chance if that was 16 teams that the SEC could have gotten 6 playoff teams. They got 3 in Georgia, Texas, and Tennessee, and Ole Miss, South Carolina, and Alabama were right there on the cusp of getting into the playoff. They would have been 3 of those teams in consideration for 16 if we were in a 16-team playoff. So the SEC understands, like, okay, we could try and push for 4 automatic qualifiers because we got kind of screwed out of 1 here. The SEC's words, not necessarily mine. Or we could just go for 5 automatic qualifiers based on conference champions and then go for 11 at-large bids, understanding that more often than not, we're going to have 4 teams. Whether they automatically qualify or not, we're going to have 4. And there's a good chance that we're going to get 5, and there's going to be some times where the SEC is going to get 6. And so I don't see this as Greg Sankey backing off what he's wanting in SEC play or in playoff expansion. I see this as, hey, we knew what the Big Ten was wanting. And listen, if any conference wants the automatic qualifiers the most, it's the Big Ten, because you could see all of the discussion about Indiana making it, having very few quality wins on their schedule, making it into the playoff. And you can look beyond Michigan, beyond Ohio State, beyond Penn State. What are the programs that you look at and you're like, yeah, that's a program that would deserve a 4th AQ bid? So the Big Ten has all the reasons in the world to go and push for 4 automatic qualifiers, because there's going to be years where they're going to be getting 3. And there might be some years where they're only going to get 2. Not likely. It's more often than not that they're going to have 3 and maybe get 4 still. But they're one of the conferences that, hey, yes, we've got a lot of power, but all that power is sitting at the top. And there's a lot of like middling teams and then those bottom ranked teams that are just kind of, you know what I mean? So the SEC can settle for this 5-11, understanding that they're going to get the benefit of the doubt with 11 at-large bids more often than not, because the strength of schedule is so difficult. You look at the ESPN SP Plus, the Football Power Index, you look across the board, our own analysts here on the Locked On Network, they are discussing how difficult the SEC schedules are. And the strength of schedules for SEC teams are that much greater than what you see across the country. And the Big 12, the ACC, they're kind of more on board with this 5-11 approach. I think Greg Sankey's on board with it simply because he knows that, hey, my coaches, my athletic directors, my programs don't necessarily want to add a 9th game. And we're not going to give the Big Ten what it wants. Because why do we need to? Why does the SEC need to follow the Big Ten suit? Okay, they won the last 2 national championships. Big whoop. Who's dominated the college football landscape for much of the last decade and a half? The SEC. Who's helped push the college football landscape forward over the last decade and a half? The SEC. So if anybody has an idea or a direction or a vision for where this thing should go, that's going to be for the good of the game, it's not the Big Ten. It's the SEC. I mean, the Big Ten, for all intents and purposes, killed the Pac-12. Was that for the good of the game? No. That was for the good of the Big Ten. The Big Ten's out here looking for the best of the Big Ten. The SEC, are they looking out for the best of the SEC? Absolutely. That's Greg Sankey's job. Greg Sankey's job is to better support and better do things in the best interests of his programs. At the same time, you see him willing to do what's in the best interest of the game by looking more into this 5-11. And it was probably always on the table for him. Because again, the SEC doesn't want to necessarily go to that 9th conference game because there's more money to be made by having these big time non-conference matchups that we're going to get this year. We're going to get so many great non-conference matchups. Everybody wants to talk about the FCS game that SEC teams play, but nobody wants to talk about the top 5 matchups between like Texas and Ohio State that'll be at the beginning of the season, or the top 15 matchup between Oklahoma and Michigan that'll be week 2. Nobody wants to talk about that. They just want to focus on the FCS game. Or nobody wants to talk about Clemson LSU right out of the gate. 2 potential national title contenders going toe-to-toe right out of the gate. Nobody wants to talk about that. So why you see people talking about the SEC maybe giving in to what the Big 12 or the ACC wants, or not letting the Big 10 push them around. To me, it just comes back to this. Like, the SEC likes what they've got. There's no reason to necessarily change what they're doing unless the networks, ESPN in particular, are willing to pay big money for that 9th conference game. Not just a per diem or, a prorated rate for that 9th conference game. So I think, again, 5-11, I think, was always on the table for the SEC and Greg Sankey. They wanted to see what the landscape looked like for a 4 automatic qualifiers. I just don't think that that's something that they want to get involved in. And listen, the Big Ten, they might be pushing for the SEC to get 9 conference games, but why should the SEC give in to what the Big Ten wants?
Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
Trayvon Diggs is getting closer to returning to the field.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast.
We got a Trayvon Diggs update. Brian Schottenheimer said that it's going well. All signs are positive. He said, I got a chance to talk to Trayvon last week. He's down in Miami doing some training. No timeline for his return, but he had to come back a couple of weeks ago to get checked out by the doc. It sounds like he's progressing well. Where are we at in this rehab?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think, usually the way we are kind of marking the time in these rehabs are obviously the time since the injury, but also kind of where he is in the Britt Brown process, right? Like, is he on the cords yet, or is he still working on the sides? And since he's not part of this rehab group, and we're not getting kind of shots or ideas of that, it's hard to know, right? He's been down in Miami. He's working with this Dr. Reef guy that I think his brother also was working with, recovering his ACL. And he came back. Steven came back. Stefan, sorry, he came back. Like a month or two earlier than I think he was.
Well, Stephon Diggs is already running routes and OTAs with the team.
Yeah, so I mean, it does look like they're clearly getting some work done while they're there, and they were working out together. He released a video today where he was doing some ladder drills. It sounds like, according to what was on the tweet, that they were doing some limited, kind of low contact, position drills. So I mean, this is all good progress, right? Like, and it kind of puts him in line to attempt to try to be back for week one, but obviously we're still a long ways away from that. And definitely it's harder to kind of gauge this without getting the kind of telltale signs that we usually get from him being in part of the Britt Brown rehab group.
All this just seems so weird with Trayvon Diggs, because we've just had so many different thoughts. Like, it's pretty clear, like the Joneses weren't happy with his rehab last year. But it sounds like Brian Schottenheimer is pleased where he's at right now. It seems like he's taking this a little bit more serious than he did last year. But there's also a part of this that we got a tweet from Todd Archer from ESPN that says Diggs is in danger of losing $500,000 in base salary because he hasn't attended off-season workouts with the Cowboys. Now, obviously, he wasn't going to be able to attend anyways because he's injured, but I think if he would have just shown up or rehabbed at the Star, he would have earned that money. I'm fascinated to know why Trayvon is willing to turn down $500,000 to not rehab in Dallas.
Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of the interesting thing. And I think some people were reading this as like, indictment on the Cowboys, but it's like, I mean, that's the contract that he signed. So why didn't he show up for any of that? That was completely optional for him, and optional with the one of the options including $500,000 in cash.
I would be ready to be for $500,000. Like, don't worry.
Fair. That's fair. That's a fair take to have. I think it's a lot of this is kind of baffling. It feels like there's an adversarial relationship right now that's going on,
right?
But I don't really know why. Like, maybe I think Trayvon could be a little upset with the idea that is kind of out there in the zeitgeist that maybe the Joneses weren't happy with the way he attacked his recovery. But I don't really feel like it was that big of a deal. And I do feel like, look, there may be something to the idea that he didn't work hard enough to kind of fully recover, and that may have contributed to why he re-injured the knee. So I think, there is something to this, but I can't really tell what it is. It does feel like there's some anger there, or there's between the two sides, but like, it seems to be happening all behind the scenes, and this is kind of pot shot taking, through the media.
Yeah, so we still don't know when Trayvon's going to be on the field. I think it's fair to expect him to be on the PUP list, meaning that he's going to miss probably the first month of the season. I don't think the Cowboys are going to rush this. I think they want him whenever he comes back to be 100%. So I still think I think we'll see him on the field before Halloween, and I think anything before that is an added bonus.
Yeah, I think the what you're shooting for, shoot for the stars is trying to not be start the season on PUP. I don't know if he's going to make that or not. We'll see. More than likely, they'll be more cautious than anything, like you said. And I think if in that case, Halloween feels like a very realistic goal for this.
All right, we got some other cornerback news from Cowboys OTA. Let's start with Israel Makambo, a player that we've liked for a while, who the Cowboys decided to bring back. Playing out wide as a corner, playing in the slot, playing all over. Yeah. It feels like this is, I'm hoping finally the year that they unleash Izzy Makambo.
Yeah, look, this is a guy obviously every dayers know how we feel about Izzy Makambo. We've been talking about him for years, right? So I do like that they're kind of giving him an opportunity to play more outside, especially in a more zone-heavy scheme where he's going to be able to play with the boundary, run up and down the sideline, not have to chase guys across the formations. Everyone kind of forgets that he was an outside corner in college. That's what he transitioned from a boundary corner to inside to play safety. So this is kind of him returning home in a lot of ways. I think that there's reasons that he didn't come into the league as an outside corner, because I think you probably play him there with very limited capacity and what the coverages you may be using. But I think that he's certainly worth taking a look at just to see what you've got, especially on kind of assembling a game day roster, just to know what you've got in the defensive backs and who can play where. And I think it gives them more flexibility if, there's an injury on the game day. So, and right now you haven't really got the kind of nickel situations solved, and they're throwing a lot of bodies at the problem just to see who can kind of handle it. So, I like that also includes getting Izzy some snaps, maybe outside where he wouldn't normally be getting snaps.
Couple other cornerback things. Kalen Carson, the Cowboys rookie from last year, who actually started week 1 against Cleveland. He's been dealing with a shoulder injury. He had offseason surgery, not quite out on the field yet, but I think the belief is that he'll be ready by the time we get to training camp. He might even be ready to do some stuff on the field in mini camp next week, but he's getting close.
Yeah, I think this is a really important one because it just kind of helps set a floor. I thought he really gave you some good reps early in the season, especially that first week. He really played some good football for a rookie coming in, starting in week 1. And we saw a lot of really great stuff from him in training camp. So I do feel like he took his serious lumps in the middle of the season. But that he's also the kind of guy that would take that and internalize that. He battled like a veteran last year during training camp. I can imagine that also means he's going to attack this rehab and get better at playing his position coming in. I wouldn't even be shocked to see him be a guy that's in the mix for some of these slot snaps when he comes back potentially. No. So I think look, he's a guy that maybe he's not someone in contention for those starting 3 spots, but if he could come in and play at a level that you kind of hoped that you saw at training camp last year, he could be a very valuable backup. Him and Elam, once you get healthy.
What another nice day it seems like at OTAs. Yep.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a sec for sure, because I think him and would be a nice floor. And Elam, let's go ahead and talk about Elam, right? Like, again, coming in there, getting another pass breakup. It seems like every single open practice with the media, he's gotten a pass breakup against somebody, like Pickens or CD, So, again, like, it's about like snaps and percentages and exposure, right? Like, I do think that there's an opportunity to get some nice play out of Elam, but just not overexposing him. And I think if you can just have him help you get through that time period we talked about, Halloween, right? When you think Diggs will be back, Revel will be back, when, Carson, maybe by the time he's ready to start coming in and play some significant snaps opposite of him. I think that you could really feel good about this situation for a little while and then allow him to kind of fall back into a kind of a more backup role, which I think he probably fits really nicely into.
The NBA Finals are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action right now. When you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. FanDuel makes betting easy. Whether it's picking your favorite teams or diving into player props from three-pointers to steals, there's so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. You could place that first $5 bet on who you think will win the NFL Rookie of the Year. Travis Hunter is 9-1 to win the offensive award, but 10-1 to win the defensive award as well. I would probably take both of those. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today.
We've talked a lot about trades for the Cavs, but what if they just stand pat?
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
I've talked about how I think the Cavs need to make some changes this offseason. I think that the roster, they should not run it back. But the thing that I probably haven't spent time talking about is, well, what if they do run it back? And I don't know where you come out yet on whether or not they should or shouldn't, who they should trade or who they shouldn't trade. But kind of where I want to start today is, if this group decides to run it back again, which I don't think is some crazy thing to think could happen, what does it look like?
Yeah, so I think this is a great question. I do tend to fall into, I know we'll talk more about like what this looks like. I tend to fall into the same bucket as you, where I think changes need to be made. I think you've tried with this core for 3 straight years and you come up short 3 straight years. So you need to change something up. I'm not saying like blow it all up, but I think there are some ancillary changes that need to happen. But what's interesting, like you asked this question and I was talking about this a couple weeks ago. Like if you think about the landscape of the Eastern Conference right now, you have the Bucks with Giannis, who may or may not be coming back. It sounds like he is open to being traded, and he may go to the West. He might end up in the Western Conference in some capacity. You have a Sixers team that it seems like their window has basically like closed because Joel Embiid can't stay healthy. We have no idea what that team's going to look like. They were awful this year without him. So what does the future hold for them? And then you have a Celtics team that is going to be in a little bit of a transition. They're not going to have Jason Tatum next year. So that maybe opens up this window where everyone thought the Celtics were going to run the East for like, you know, the next 5 years. And now all of a sudden maybe it was just a 1-year thing. And they're like the Cavs, you know, sort of financially strapped right now. Like they can only do so much. Are they going to just run it back with the same group and keep paying these high tax bills, especially because they just got a new owner as well? So understanding like the landscape of the East, I think is key here, because on one hand, somebody like Kobe Altman could look and say, well, hey, the East is going to be weaker. At least we feel like it's going to be. We feel like we're right in the thick of things in this conference already. If a few things go differently, if a few balls bounce differently, if injuries, right, don't impact that series against the Pacers, maybe we're still playing. And if that's kind of the thought process, like there's certainly a case to be made as to why you would just keep it the same and say, hey, let's go back out and see like if luck, because luck is a factor this time of year. We know that. Like, let's see if luck impacts, like goes in our favor next year. And that allows us to, you know, go deeper into the playoffs. Now, there's an opposite side of this, which is on the same vein, like that's also maybe because the East is going to be more wide open. That's a reason to make a move, right? Like push the chips in the center of the table, go for it while you feel like there's an opportunity to make a run here. But it's less about what we think, obviously, and more about what Kobe Altman thinks and how he approaches that question. I think is going to be fascinating.
Right. And I did spend yesterday's show, at least the start of it, because over at The Ringer, Zach Lowe talked about this on one of his podcasts, and I found it to be very interesting. But he went 1 through 15. Which Eastern Conference team would you most want to be for the next 5 years? And he had the Cavs at number 1. And it's hard for me to disagree with that. Like, despite the fact that they came up as short as they did in the postseason this year, which nobody expected. We all expected them to, at the very least, make the conference finals as opposed to losing in the conference semifinals in 5 games. But that doesn't mean that their future is not bright. Now, whether or not that involves them making a trade or not making a trade, I do think the state of the rest of the Eastern Conference matters a little bit in this conversation, because you look up and down the East, you know, you bring up Milwaukee. If Giannis is there, like the Bucks are going to win 40 games next year, and they're not going to be a threat in the playoffs because Damian Lillard's not going to play after tearing his Achilles, and the rest of that roster stinks.
Yeah.
Indiana, I think pretty good. How long is that team going to be together for a franchise that historically does not pay the luxury tax? I don't know. Orlando, are they ever going to figure out how to score points? I don't know. Like, I like a lot of their pieces, but you start looking up and down the East. I mean, New York, the Nets fired their coach yesterday, 2 days ago, because they feel like they've tapped out that group. Like, you go up and down the East, and they're not teams that you would rather be than the Cavs. Like, this doesn't mean that there aren't teams that also have good situations they're in, but the Cavs are in a really good spot. And that leads me to wonder, okay, well, if they do just run it back and bank on, maybe being healthier in the postseason, or maybe not just seeing their offense collapse because they suddenly forget how to make wide open threes, is that a viable strategy?
So for me, I don't know that I can just like go into a season and be like, well, hey, if things go differently, it's all good. I think that like listen, I can understand from like a fan perspective. We were all fans at one point, right? Of numerous teams, different teams throughout our lives. I think like when you have that perspective on it, it's like, yeah, from a fan perspective, we always hold on to this. Like, well, if this one thing went differently, maybe we're talking about, X, Y, Z happening, So I get why that is a take you can have. I get why that is a stance that you can have. For me, though, it's like you got to kind of create your own luck here to a degree. And that's why, again, I just think you like changing something out, trying to make the team at least a little bit better, or at least maybe try to get under the second apron where you can have a little more flexibility is something that the Cavs should prioritize, because right now this team has only shown you like their ceiling is the second round. And I also wonder, and you obviously you were there, Danny, and as was I for Kobe Oatman's press conference at the end of the season. And I can 100% totally wrap my head around the idea that there is another level to Evan Mobley's game, and that there's another level to this team that's very, very young developing, right? And so when he says that, I get it, but it's also now been his reasoning for this team's shortcomings the last couple of years. Has like, this is the third year in a row where he said that exact same thing. Hey, we're still young, we're going to develop. And my big question that I have for him is, okay, how long can that be the excuse? How long can that be the thing you fall back on of like, well, hey, if we just keep developing, we're going to get over this hump eventually? Because at some point you might not, and you're going to have to make those tough decisions. And so for me, I'm like, I think that's now. I think that time is now. But listen, like to put a bow on this entire conversation about like standing pat, I do think there's a viable argument to be had that like they could just try to do it all again. And if they do that, like they're still going to probably win like 50 plus games. They're still going to be one of the top teams in the East. The problem is though, like nobody's going to take them seriously until this time of year. Like it's going to be about doing it on this stage in May and potentially in June and getting over that hump finally. And no one's going to buy that they've changed unless they actually change out some of these pieces and parts. Now that's not something that necessarily they worry about, but they have to think about like what this opportunity is and how close they are and whether or not it makes sense to pull the trigger on something like that. And I would, but I also feel like Kobe Altman seems pretty reserved to the idea that like, if we don't end up doing anything, we do stand pat, then we're going to be just fine. And I think we can still win a title with this current construction of the roster.
So here is what I think is one of the biggest gambles of standing pat. And I don't think that, I mean, we went from last season to the season that just finished with the roster really not changing at all in the offseason. Like the two-way guys changed, but the roster itself really didn't change. Obviously, there was the trade in the middle of the season that changed things, and there was a change on the coaching staff, bringing in Kenny Atkinson and getting rid of JB Bickerstaff, but they didn't make a change. If like they quote unquote run it back, I don't think that they're going to bring back actually every player the way that they did before, just because I don't think that that's financially feasible. So maybe running it back is like Jared Allen returns and Darius Garland returns, which I don't necessarily think. I think one of those things is more likely than the other. But I think the biggest risk in doing that is not about how good this team is going to be, but one of the talking points that immediately happened as soon as this postseason ended was about mental toughness. And how do you can that be taught? Can it be learned through experiences? And I think the answer there is probably somewhere in the middle. And I don't think that this Cavs team is just absent of any guys that are mentally tough. Like, I think that's unfair and not true. But I also think one of the biggest gambles would be that they learned this mental toughness from this series. Because I'm also at the point, Spencer, where if this did not teach this group of guys the required postseason basketball mental toughness that they need, I don't know that anything ever will. And if you're taking the gamble that this did and you're wrong, then I think things in the future get really dicey. I think we talk about where the Cavs are at in terms of their future for the next 5 years compared to the rest of the East. And I love where things are at right now for them. I think they have an extremely bright future still. But if you make the gamble that no, that loss to the Pacers made us grow up in ways that we didn't know we needed to grow up, and now we are truly ready to win a championship, and you're correct about that, then you can stand pat. But you don't know that you're correct about that. And I think that is a very big risk to take.
Yeah. No, I think you're 100% right. And I think, like, to your point on you don't know, running it back and just saying, like, you know, they feel that way because of what they've seen. That is, again, just banking on this idea that, like, luck's going to fall in your, you know, like, luck's going to go your way this time of year. And I just don't know if that's like a legitimate, like, if you're a GM of a team, you can't just let your strategy be, well, hey, luck. That's our strategy for how we're going to approach this roster. Like, that's not like a way to really build a team. And the mental toughness thing is a great conversation. I've had it a number of times at this point, obviously, but like, I think to along the lines of what you said, there's a degree of mental toughness that comes with, like, when you're in the playoffs, you learn it. You learn that those games, the intensity gets turned up. You learn in a certain moment how you're going to handle yourself, what you have to do. You know, that the end of game 2 where they're turning the ball over on inbound passes and things like that. Like, those are where the mental toughness piece comes into play. And hopefully they learn from those things. But I still think there's also like a mentality part of it that can't be learned and is just kind of innate in people. And that's where, like, as we talk about, should somebody be traded? Should they make a change with maybe somebody in the core 4? That's where I think it's like, how do you change out some of the pieces and parts to get more of that mentality on your team and guys who have experienced that already and kind of know what it takes that time of year to get you over that hump?